Hey guys, how you doing? Hopefully you're doing well. We're going to do our second installment on the scientific revolution, probably our last installment too of notes. We'll do the rest of the stuff in class and through your reading. So let's step back a little bit. Remember what goes down. Science before the scientific revolution. Um, we talked about this in the first video, which we'll get into more detail next week. How we figure stuff out, what we already know, obviously based on reasoning, what we see. Um, and there wasn't a lot of experimental method happening yet. So a lot of our ideas were like kind of based on what we can see. So Monty Python, Holy Grail, y'all know I love the movie, right? She's she's the same as a duck, she's made of wood, therefore a witch, right? Um, the science based a lot about idea of alchemy and astrology and Aristotle, but also superstition. If we can't explain something, it might be superstition, right? We see witchcraft, why we see religion, all those ideas being a big deal. This is a time where these things start to change. And our modern idea of science and the scientific method that all your chemistry teachers have been preaching for so long come into play. And so the idea of empiricism becomes a big deal here. We have Roger Bacon, English guy, but the only idea is that the only experience, talking about, right, the only true source of knowledge comes from experience and experiencing things. So the idea that you can learn from knowledge, learn from what's happening, and all those ideas. And so the ideas of Bacon kind of started going towards scientific method. And our scientific method is going to be a combination of two guys, okay, two people. We're an English guy and a French guy getting along, kind of dogs and cats living together, right? Where's our Sir Francis Bacon? Nice hat, even a better little necky thing here, okay? But Bacon is an interesting guy, okay? He takes this idea of an empiricism, the idea of doing study by experimentation, and starts breaking it down. He's an English guy, he's a philosopher, he's an empiricist. He does a lot of things, right? He's a writer, artist, he's a bourgeois, he's middle class. He's in the court of Queen Elizabeth, though he's not real popular. Later on, he's in the court of King James as well, where he becomes more popular, gets knighted. Rumor is he may have written all of Shakespeare's stuff. There's a great theory about that out there. Pretty big guy, right? Okay. He talks a lot about inductive reasoning, the idea that you need to organize data, perform experiments, those kind of things, and looking at experimental methodologies. So he said, let's throw up the old ideas, get rid of them, toss them, goodbye, out of here, okay? And look at things with new eyes. And the idea here is a great renewal of looking at science in a new way. It's asking the right questions. If you don't know why something's going on, don't just assume it's, magic. Don't just assume you base what you already know. Figure out new stuff. It's the idea here. Deduction was Aristotle's idea, right? I know this stuff, right? So it has to be true. Bacon says induction is the idea of I'm going to find the specifics and come to an answer. The idea that knowledge is kind of more power than anything. The idea of making experiments happen. And he writes his books. He writes his book, The Empirical Method. And the thing is, this method had been around for a while already. And it's kind of weird thinking about it, but he's writing these theories right around 1600 or so. Brahe and Copernicus have already been doing this kind of stuff. Galileo, too, they're already doing these things, right? But he formalizes it, writes it up. And he has this, position as Lord Chancellor of England. He's a member of Parliament. He's in the courts of England. He's doing all that kind of stuff, right? He has a lot of power, those kind of things. But at the same time, his book doesn't really do a lot. Unfortunately for him, it doesn't really change a lot of ideas. But eventually it's going to get there, okay, in terms of where things happen. Eventually we'll get to this point. But the idea of experimentation, of experimenting, is a big deal here. So rumor is, and Bacon died in 1626. He dies of pneumonia. An example of this is how he dies. He dies because he was in this castle, right? And he was trying to figure out a new way to preserve meat. Before this, obviously, you can smoke it, you can salt it. Basic ideas right now, you know what I mean? He dies from pneumonia because he's sitting there trying to see if freezing meat is a good way of preserving it. He's sitting in the cold, gets sick, gets pneumonia, dies. Obviously, par for the course back then. But, is asking those questions and seeing what's going on and experimenting is a big deal there. On the flip side of Bacon, we have René Descartes. Now, Descartes, really cool guy. He really focused on the idea of reason and not tradition being the source of all knowledge. We'll kind of get into more details about him shortly here. But his big background is that he was not only a philosopher, but he was a mathematician. And his idea of proof has to depend upon logic. And so he did a lot of math stuff. We'll talk about that shortly here. But his very famous quote, I think, therefore I am, we'll get to later on. But he wanted to do deductive reasoning. They have breaking things down to pieces and then trying to figure them out using clear and logical evidence. So obviously you have the inductive reasoning of Bacon saying, I see this, the experimental portion of it, the deductive reasoning, thinking it through, breaking it down little pieces of what Descartes wants to do. But obviously his idea is that reason and reasoning through what's happening is going to be the source of all knowledge for him. So here's Descartes again, a few quotes from Descartes. Interesting part about him is that, yeah, he was French, but he started as a mathematician, but he does most of his work while living in the Netherlands. So he actually spent most of his time in Amsterdam. One of the things he did was coordinate geography, which if you're like me and not a math guy, you're going to hate this. But he's the guy who took the idea of algebra formulas, right, and be able to chart them on a graph, like parabolas and that crazy kind of stuff, okay? But one thing he wrote then, as he did as a mathematician, he's also being a philosopher. And so he basically said, we're going to write this idea in his discourse on method. Discourse meaning his book, his literature, his speech, right? Method is how do we find the truth? And his big idea of truth was that he said we must take each piece and explain it with logic and break it down. So you're going to start with your clear facts, okay? You're going to subdivide each problem into many parts necessary using a step-by-step logical sequence. It's very, very mathematical in how he does things. And a discourse on method is a really big part of how to analyze pieces. Now, his famous phrase, I think, therefore I am, he goes, okay, who am I? Am I alive? Am I a person? What proof do I have that I am actually here? Well, his proof was that he was thinking. The fact that he says, I'm thinking about it, means I actually have to be here. And the way it's using that logic to kind of prove that. And so like I said up here is one of these little pieces up here. If you were to be a real seeker after truth, it's necessary to at least once in your life you doubt as far as possible all things. And this idea of the word, I'm going to bring my little pencil here, a little drawing tool here, is that the word doubt is a big deal here. You have to be able to doubt what's already happening in his minds and look at all the new information. You can't just take what's already been there. Now, the other thing he talks about a lot is Christian dualism. That's a term we'll make sure you guys knew, or we'll also call it Cartesian dualism as well. This term right here. The idea that it's kind of dividing all existence into spiritual and material, thinking and extended. And so the spiritual, the thinking substance, can only be determined through logic, okay? So these are ideas that are not out there, okay? You can't really see them right now. So it could be, spiritual ideas, soul ideas, that kind of stuff, whereas the extended substance or the more material substance is going to be what you can actually experiment on and investigate in those kind of things. Descartes is a really cool guy. I love Descartes. We're going to read both Descartes and Bacon in class and look at their ideas. But going on here, we're going to take a look at this idea because obviously the big change we have is how you find truth. Before this, truth was all about the idea of trying to, use what use your tradition. Now it's find new truth in a new way. And now we have this new multi-step process. We have observations, okay, looking at phenomena. We have developing a theory, okay, so it's your deductive reasoning, right? Why is it happening logically? Why is it going to happen? That's your Descartes. And then you test the theory with experiments. That's your Bacon. We can't combine all these pieces together, right? Okay, and make this new reasoning and try to figure it out, combining the parts of Bacon, combining the parts of Descartes, and making this new scientific method, which will be used now from now on in. And that's a big change we see these two guys and why these two guys are so gosh darn important in terms of European history and the scientific revolution. Now, the last topic I want to talk about here is medicine. And that being how important is medicine in the whole idea of this time. Now, here's a picture showing medicine before this. They are doing bloodletting, the idea of getting the bad stuff out of your body so new good stuff can take over. This was the prevailing thought in European medicine for a really, really long time. It really happened, it really existed, and it was really there. And it was all based on traditions, the church, and this guy here named Galen. Galen's a Greek guy who was a physician who wrote about elements. Basically, the body had these four humors. You had types of blood, you had types of bile in you, and basically how the body works. You have all these fluids. You have to try and balance all these fluids. That was the biggest idea. So if you're sick, you're ill, that kind of stuff, The issue is that you have a fluid imbalance. How you fix that? Take some fluid out by bloodletting. This was actually still believed for a long, long time, up through the 1800s. Basically, George Washington, okay, big U.S. president guy, died from infection from bloodletting. So bloodletting was still used for a long, long time. But certain people started going beyond this. The church was your big medical professionals at this time. The church provided, clerics and priests, were like physicians, that kind of thing. Eventually, you start having university-trained doctors and that kind of stuff become part of it too. But honestly, your best barbers from the Middle Ages, your best surgeons were barbers because they knew how to cut, those kind of deals. Some people doubled up here. But most of your tools was the idea of bloodletting, right? Here's this royal covered in leeches trying to get the bad blood out. Yes, they used leeches, okay? And so that's what kind of medicine we're looking at, right? All until we get to guys like Andreas Vesalius, who was one of our first people actually to take this scientific approach, not really formalized yet, and apply it to the body, at least the idea of observation. And so he was a Belgian guy, and he did a lot of work in Netherlands and Belgium and Italy as well. And he wrote this book called On Fabric of Human Body. His big deal was that he went through and fixed a lot of Galen's ideas by actually cutting up cadavers. So he would cut up people who were dead, and were typically they're prisoners, right? And he would actually go through and do, and see what the body looked like. He'd sketch the body and all the different pieces of it by getting permission to cut the body up. Obviously, after he's doing this after the Reformation, so he has chances to actually look at stuff and see what things are going on. And this happens later on then too with, we saw the Dutch Rembrandt painting of the anatomy lab, the anatomy lesson. And so you see people using on the fabric of the human body as a new textbook and kind of correcting Galen's errors about what's actually flowing through your body. And to prove Galen wrong, we have a British guy named William Harvey, who actually figured out how blood moved through the heart and through the body, and actually described how the circulatory system actually worked, proving Galen wrong. And so these are some of the foundations that are happening, some of the things that are challenged at this time. We'll analyze these a little more in class. We'll look at a little more stuff, see how it compares to your text. That's all I got for today. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.